My name's Tobias Tobbell. I'm the writer and director of Confine.
Can you tell us, first of all, what Confine is about?
Confine is a hostage thriller about an agoraphobic woman whose home is broken into by someone who's sort of messed up a burglary going on next door and is looking for a temporary hideout. Thinking the flat's empty, when the thief finds the flat isn't empty, she takes the woman hostage.
And how did inspiration for the film first come about?
These stories come together over quite a long time actually and started very differently. The original inspiration was, I'm not entirely sure, I think it was actually watching some fashion TV and starting to think about a little bit about the real life behind models and what they do and so on. And also sort of exploring some things like OCD and agoraphobia and other sort of psychological disorders. This film doesn't deal with them specifically, but it sort of dealt with a combination of those two things. A former model who's dealing with not being beautiful anymore.
Right. And how long did the script take to write?
On and off, the script took 8 years to write, but there were big gaps between drafts. I wrote 2 or 3 drafts in 2003, 2004, then left it for a few years, came back. So it was about 6 drafts over 8 years altogether.
And can you tell us about how Daisy Lowe, Eliza, Bennett and Alfie Allen got involved?
Eliza Bennett was the first person to get involved in the film, I think. We met her early Christmas, just before doing the shoot, so she signed up quite quickly. She was quite interested in playing this slightly sociopathic girl. Alfie came on board shortly afterwards, and he seemed quite keen on the role, more based on his sort of relationships and sort of exploring the relationship between him and his character and Kaylee. Daisy took over from someone else who couldn't do the film at the last minute, and so we got her in very quickly for an audition. She talked about having had some other offers for sort of roles that were based around her being a model and being pretty, whereas of course we're using the same experience of her having a modelling background but having a few scars on her body. I think she found it more interesting, particularly the nature of the character. She's agoraphobic, she's very shy, and I think Daisy felt like she could empathise with a lot of those characteristics but have the modelling background to bring to the role as well.
Right. And how long did the film take to shoot?
The shoot itself was 5 weeks, so we did a 1 week set build at the studio when we were doing a little bit of rehearsing, and then a 5-week shoot immediately afterwards.
The film's quite tense throughout. What was the atmosphere like on set between takes?
The atmosphere on set was actually extremely friendly. We had quite a young crew as well as a young cast, so in between takes people were chatting, playing games. We obviously ran through lines and rehearsals as well, but it was actually very, very relaxed. And shooting in a studio meant we weren't outside, weren't having to deal with weather issues and where we were going to eat that day or where we were going to go to the loo that day. It was all just the same place every day, under a roof, nice and warm. So it was actually quite simple and straightforward and friendly.
And the set was custom built, you tell me. Can you tell us a bit about that? And there's a lot of books, for example, in the study. Where on earth did you get them all from?
We shot the film in Greenford Studios out in Middlesex, and we built the set from scratch. Luke Hull, our production designer, worked on a few model designs for it, designing this beautiful Georgian set. And of course, because she's a hoarder, we had to source all these 8,000 magazines, 15,000 books. There's about 50 paintings in the up on the walls around the set, around her flat, that we had to source. All of these things came free just by sourcing people who had this stuff, like recycling centre for the 15,000 books, galleries and artists for the paintings, some of which were worth up to £15,000. So we had to be pretty careful with this stuff. And the magazines came from the sponsors of the film. A lot of the set came from sponsors like West One Bathrooms, sort of contributing a bathroom set to use. So we didn't have that much money to build the set. So it really helped us to be able to source all this stuff for small amounts of money or nothing at all to help us put together this very beautiful set.
Do you have any funny stories from production?
I'm going to have to think about that one. the only funny stories I have from production are probably ones that I shouldn't tell. So
Always
and
the
I
best.
can't think of any. I can't think of any stories that I can tell. Sadly.
Fair enough. And how do you draw a line at the violence in the film, or did you just let it organically evolve when you were writing the story?
When I was writing the story, I only tried to think about what the characters would do in their situation at the moment it takes place. So if Katie feels like she really has to do this to make her point, then I would write it. She would have to do it. The way I shot it, though, I felt like I was always holding back a little bit, just to make sure it wasn't explicit. It wasn't the right sort of audience to be doing full, gory, nasty, disgusting this and that. So what the character does is quite nasty, but what we show on screen is always very carefully shot, so we're not, shooting blood splurting everywhere or whatever. That's how we dealt with the gore.
Sure. And can you tell us a bit about your favourite directors, your personal favourite films and influences?
Favourite films is probably easier, actually, although not many of them will necessarily be relevant to Confine, but I do like writing and creating things in isolated environments and in contained environments, I think because I have a theatrical background, but I do love films like Cube. Also a lot of sci-fi films set in space, like Alien and 2001, they're not really claustrophobic, but they're quite limited in their locations, so they're very big influences. Ridley Scott, definitely. Stanley Kubrick, quite a lot too. I love the Coen brothers film. I love the idea of mixing more humour into actually quite subject matter that's actually quite dark. I didn't really do this with Confine, but I'm certainly exploring mixing in more sort of humour with these darker stories. So the Coen brothers are a good source for that.
And can you give us any tips or hints as to what you're thinking about doing next?
I'm working on a couple of projects at the moment, and both of them are in fact sci-fi thrillers. I think it's the genre that I'm at the moment most interested in. One of them is slightly bigger budget, so it will almost simply be the other one, which is a very contained thriller story set in quite a smallish environment. It's on another planet in a very small base, and it's very like a working class atmosphere, so a cross between Moon and the Abyss, if you like. But that's all I'll say for now, because I'm not quite sure where the story's going to end up.
Absolutely. Finally, have you got any messages for the fans of Confine?
I just hope you enjoy Confine as much as I enjoyed making it, and enjoy watching Daisy in her first lead role. We had a great time working together, so and I think she did a great job, so I hope you enjoy that too.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
You have no free will whilst I'm here. You do what I tell you to do. Listen and obey.